Okay, so I guess we are live. See, I should have
Oh,
my halo painting behind me because you got the flower.
anyways,
Anyway,
go.
look, it's like we're already married. We're already saying the same thing. Anyways, I am Andy, as everybody knows on my channel, and this is my friend Shithead. Here you can see he's correctly labeled. I didn't do that, by the way. Jim did that.
I did it. I did it.
He did it. So this is a quick trial run Jim and I were thinking about, and I think that we're going to do a show of some kind of regular online feature where we will use our extensive knowledge and wit and intellect to talk about various mystery topics that both the so-called fringe and academic archaeologists like me are interested in. So Jim came and did my class twice, right? You were there twice in
Twice.
South Carolina. Yeah. So survived the first time and came back again. And I don't know, we got along pretty well. He seems okay.
Tell you that.
Yeah, we were having a great conversation before we went live, and now we're just gonna sit here and share. This is when he actually wants to say anything. We're trying not to get each other in trouble.
Okay, that's the cue for me to talk then. Yeah. Andy and I have a lot in common. We're both interested in science. I was an economist before I became a stonemason and a giantologist and other things, but I've always had an abiding interest in archaeology and anthropology. My father would get the National Geographics, and I saw Machu Picchu when Hiram Bingham found it in the early black and white edition. I was totally enthralled. I study metaphysics and like the spiritual masters throughout history. So there's an esoteric aspect where I'm interested in that as well. Like just these, questions about greater realities and stuff. I'm perfectly happy to talk about anything like that. I've spent many weeks with shamans in the rainforest doing ayahuasca ceremonies, and so I'll go anywhere for a good story. And I found that there's a lot of traditions that tell of a kind of a different past than I think we collectively agree upon in science. And I want to figure out what is true and what is false. But Andy and I meet where there's a lot of bullshit, and snake oil is on the alternative side. And I think there's a lot of reluctance to be perceived when you're an academic as dipping, your toe into the water of insanity. So it's kind of that mix. I like to be a goodwill ambassador from the lunatic fringe, and actually, frankly, the way I'm oriented is I want to take my case to the heart of skeptic for real and hear what they have to say. I always want to take my evidence to an expert. I don't want to like sit in my mother's basement and claim a fake conspiracy. So a lot of people don't want to do that because they're, interested in keeping the gig going. I want to sell books. I want to do a show I don't believe in, that kind of crap. So I think it's a good pairing, and I think it's pretty absent in these debates. So I look forward to talking about all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like I'm not planning on debating. Like, I think that one of the things that will make this work is that there's a lot of stuff we don't know about a lot of these topics, and there's a lot of things we do know. And sometimes I feel like the mix of what is known and what is unknown gets really distorted. Especially when you hear like the fringe side, they want to say that this has never been explained, or scientists are baffled, or archaeologists are astounded. And like, yeah, there's a lot of really interesting, astounding things that like we can't fully explain, but I don't think anybody's fainting because of it. Like there's a lot of information out there to go with the misinformation. So like I think what's interesting, like, I've learned a lot from listening to you talk about stuff that like I had no idea was even a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. That's great that those conversations are out there. There's stuff to talk about. There's connections being made. My expertise is in mostly New World archaeology. That's what I do. I don't study the origins of civilization except for in a really superficial way in the old world. So I know people who do. If I have a question, I go to them or whatever. But I think there's a lot of ground for having conversations that bridge that gap between kind of the unknown and the known, and then also talking about how do we know what we actually know, right? Because there are all kinds of things questions that maybe we can't answer, but how do we get answers to those? What other kind of information would a person need in order to actually address that question? And I think one of the things I hear from you is that a lot of times in the fringe or alternative community, or whatever you want to call it, like there's not necessarily a real incentive to actually find the answers, because having the question has a lot of value, because then you can be on TV to talk about the ancient mystery. I think it's okay to have mysteries and to still talk about how you're going to address them.
Absolutely. And I've learned, so many people have come to me and like, oh, I have this artifact. And, they come to me and I'm like, well, I'm not a professional. I can give you my opinion, but I'm not a geologist. I'm not an archaeologist. I say, go to local university and go to the geology department. And they're like, oh no, they're going to like confiscate it. And I'm like, no. That's the kind of horseshit that's driven by producers making shows or some conspiracy nut selling books. That's not how science works, And not to get long-winded, but I'll say like, the Denisovan skull, the Dragon Man skull they just found, or Denisovan teeth or Hobbit bones, they weren't covered up by a cabal of archaeologists. You got to understand how science works. You know what I mean? That these ideas of academic conspiracies are just terrible for the debate. You know what I mean? It's like dealing with the QAnon person. It's like, oh no, Hillary Clinton, the real her is in Guantanamo, and this is a hologram. Like that's the answer you get. You know what I'm saying? So like, how do you debate that? And you can't. You got to appeal to logical and reasonable people, and that's what I like to do. But that doesn't mean I'm open to some of the strangest ideas you might imagine. And
really,
but where the rubber meets the road is like objective reality. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, so I know, I said I'm not going to ask you to throw your friends under the bus, and I'm not. I don't think this next comment will do that. But like, that's one of the things I really didn't like about America Unearthed. Because every episode was Scott Walters sticking his finger in somebody's chest, and this kind of having this cartoon version of like, the outsider trying to get in and pry the information loose from those who want to protect it and keep it from everyone. And to be honest, like that was one of the things that pissed me off about your show a little bit, like before we became friends, because it kind of had that thread to it also, not as much as America Unearthed, but like, these giants the whole conspiracy to like keep that from people, and where did that come from? And I think you guys kind of looked at that in more of a historical way than trying to march into people's office and poke your finger in their
yes
like that. But it was there. I mean, because it's part of so many of those kind of stories. It's the Egyptologists who are trying to keep you from knowing what the pyramids were really for, and that kind of crap. And like, yeah, it's a really convenient way to explain the lack of evidence or whatever.
Absolutely. You get to be the hero and the big outsider. It's good for, when you don't find evidence, you can chalk it up to a conspiracy. There's a lot of ways it plays, especially, a lot of what you talked about is producer driven. I will say in our, Roanoke's were more of the Roanoke specials that my brother and I did were more reflection of our true orientation. The Giants, we just jumped in. It was out of control. We had lots of battles with the History Channel executives, but we appealed to Todd Disotell, the anthropologist from NYU. We had skeptics, and we interfaced with a lot of scientists in the show. But I hear what you're saying, and I learned from the experience too. It's just like I caught so much shit when I was just like doing TED Talks and saying, do you know that the town and county histories are littered with these strange accounts? It was more like telling your buddy, like, hey, look what I found when I was reading through the old documents. And there was so much pushback and kind of vilifying me and portraying me as a lunatic that I got entrenched. And instead of being more objective, I was kind of in that world of like, there's an enemy that's against me, right? So anyways, I hear what you're saying, and I've through self-reflection and admitting when I'm wrong, I've landed in a place where I can objectively, I think, view these controversial subjects. But you're right, there are so many shows that they play into the hard right anti-science crowd, it's not my thing at all. I'm not like people can do whatever they want, but I've evaluated all the vaccination science. I'll just tell a quick story that anti-vax used to be a total left-wing thing. It was never a right-wing thing, and it's been adopted as a tenet of a small fundamentalist wing of the party that's taken over on the right. So you have all this like climate, I'm against climate change, I'm against this. And it's like, that wasn't the orientation of your party. It's just become like a new zealous edicts, if you will, instead of being objective about these different things. So I feel like, that's another thing. There's a lot of, you know, there's two things. I know I'm like, I don't want to do the fake show, but there's a lot of real racism in the ancient mysteries world. But then there's people like I know, like me and Hugh and Graham Hancock and others, that they're not racist. They're trying to find out mysteries, and they're more like metaphysically and spiritually oriented. So there's a faction like that in the ancient mysteries world, and then there's like a hardcore like Nazi Superman faction as well that doesn't really get talked about, that gets played up on shows that are on History Channel and stuff. So I got friends who are conservative. I consider myself moderate at this point. So I'm not like, I don't give a shit about somebody's political orientation, but I'm not really down with skinheads and people who are like, who are transphobic and just don't allow people just to be, I mean, so I'm not down with that at all. So the larger issue is these things don't get talked about because it's like, oh, that'll reduce my click rate or something like that, and that's not in my wheelhouse.
You mean that things don't get talked about in terms of like kind of people's background or where they're coming from? Everybody just kind of, or what
exactly.
do you
mean? And the ideas, like that's not a cool idea, or like there's a lot of this kind of. I understand. See, I study ancient civilizations, and there's a lot of like, oh, the white, tall, bearded saviors showed up and taught the brown and black-skinned aboriginals how to live, that kind of crap. It's like, whoa, there's a lot of racist, really kind of pre-Nazi eugenic like stuff that gets mixed in with these philosophies. But I find that most people that I know and people who are into like, why did they build this temple? What were the spiritual beliefs of the Egyptians? It's more like, let's figure out the progression of society and where the beliefs came from. It's not a racist thing at all, but it doesn't get called out, that kind of weird racist aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so part of that though, like the weird racist aspect is there because it's been there from when these ideas were brand new. Like, it's tied to like imperialism and colonialism and the white saviors. And that's what's so troublesome about all the Atlantis stuff too, is like there's this subtext to it that I think a lot of people don't look into the history of. There's a reason why the Nazis wanted to go find Atlantis, because they identified it with this kind of Aryan homeland, and all these civilizations around the world had to be tied to it, and that's why there's depictions of white god. Like all this stuff ties into like those.
I think I lost you.
End stream.
Now you're on the other side.
Yeah, you're not moving on mine, but it says it's doing it.
I'm moving on mine.
I'm moving on mine. Am I moving on yours?
Yes.
I'm gonna click off your little box and click it back on, so maybe I can actually see you moving again. Okay, there you go. All right. You put your glasses on. That's to make you look smarter.
Fake smart.
Yeah. I don't know where it cut me off, but anyway, there's a lot of historical ties. A lot of these ideas were generated when, white Europeans had to justify colonizing the non-white people around the world. So it's not like, the racism aspect has been there for a long time. I guess that's my short point. And yeah, it seems like a lot of people who are into the ideas now don't have any idea that like that past is there. And that doesn't mean that they're racist, but the idea, just like, early anthropology like was racist as hell. That's there, and that's like something that I have to deal with as an anthropologist. Like I have to explain it to my students. Like that's where our science comes from. Like if you're going to talk about Atlantis, like you should know, and I'm not talking about you, but people who want to talk about Atlantis, like, they should know like where those ideas come from and how they've been used and abused. Talk about Atlantis all you want, but like don't deny that it has a lot of baggage,
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, I study the old, the pre-Platonic references, and it's sometimes given other names like the land of the primeval ones on the Edfu building texts in Egypt. So I am kind of actually, um, I have a fair amount of belief, if you will, or I think it's very compelling, this idea of cataclysm and a lost world. But like Edgar Casey, I'll study Edgar Casey, and he says, one of his, he was in a trance-like state. He was like this psychic, the father of holistic medicine and all that. But like he'll say, the red race, the Native Americans, showed up in the Midwest region like 12,000 years ago. So none of his ideas are racist like that. Like it's like the Native Americans, the white saviors didn't show up, but he'll claim that, or through his readings, that the Native Americans actually, or part of what one of the tribes in the Midwest that we would call Native American, came from a lost island continent, So I am conscious to like, is this 1913 and I'm reading Ostara magazine? It's like, like some pre-Nazi lunacy. And it's because I'm sensitive to those ideas. And a lot of like the QAnon stuff, like the blood drinking and all that's like a medieval trope about like Jewish bankers and stuff like that. It's like, it's like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jewish banker lasers. It's like that kind of crazy, vile bullshit comes from a long line of white imperialism. And, and I'm not like trying to claim that I'm the wokest person on earth and I'm going to give, tell everybody what to do. But I kind of draw the line with just not treating everybody, like treat everybody the same. And those ideas are weaponized, by social media and the right, and I'll fairly say that the left drives me crazy in their own right as well these days. And nobody can do anything without everybody piling on. It seems like everybody's addicted to outrage, and those things don't serve me. And so I try to talk about these ideas objectively, and that's a long-winded way of saying I do agree with you. If you're going to subscribe to an idea, you should know it's past, no question about it.
Yeah, an idea and its past are not necessarily exactly the same thing, but obviously they're connected. So it's always interesting to try to figure that stuff out, because sometimes it explains, where things come from, why things become popular or not popular, who likes them, why. So that context is always important, I think. Do you ever like say anything like short, or do you just kind of just like talk a lot? Gotta have like a little timer, like when you play chess, you turn over here, Jim, here's your 30 seconds.
It's speed talking. Yeah, I know, it's funny. I'm going to, I don't think like I'm making shit up on the run. It's more like I try to fill out these ideas when I start to talk about them. I'll probably give you an example of talking too long right now, but
oh geez.
Yes, no, shut up. Yes, when I insult somebody, it's usually succinct. So
okay, there you go. Now, I remember in your talk when you came to my class, you talked about this pre-Plato or outside of Plato, references to Atlantis, and that's actually something I would like to touch on, because I was always taught that there weren't any. So if you've got some, that would be something that's, because then if you're right, then a lot of people are wrong, but you could also be wrong. So I mean, Jim Vieira has been wrong in the past. You don't
probably
think so?
not.
Not.
There's over 200 post-Platonic references to Atlantis.
Post-Platonic. What about pre?
No. But pre-Platonic, yes. Herodotus talks about it, and he was born before Plato. And sometimes it's like Homer called it Aegygia, right? And in Plato, in Laws 3, he talks about cataclysm in an ancient flood several times. It isn't just in Timaeus and Critias. It's in the Statesman. It's also in Laws 3. He says that the Aegean flood was in 12,600 years ago, which is interesting because the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis or event is calculated to be about 12,800 years ago. So he was right in the ballpark. And Aegygia is, or Hesperides, sometimes people think that it's the Canary Islands, but there's a lot of references, like the Tuatha De Danann show up in Ireland, and they're from 4 island continents in the Atlantic, and that's in the old medieval, like the Book of Lecan, and these ancient texts that aren't correlated to, or the medieval monks didn't know about Plato, and on and on and on. So there is a lot of references that are interesting. And
all right, save it for the save it. We'll do a thing on them, and then I'll have time to actually read it so I can call you out when you are wrong.
Good luck with that.
I was thinking, so I have like a little fake, or not a fake. I did like a quick, header for the YouTube thing. I just put some of my art on there and put the title on. But I thought, it'd be cool to have someone like draw caricatures of us, like. And then I thought, I'm kind of an artist. Like I could do that because all I'd have to do is have your really big head and then a little stick body, and then like a giant ego. I'm gonna pop it with a needle.
Massive size stuff. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, we should when we both have time, set aside an hour, choose a topic.
Yeah.
I think right out of the gate, you can ruminate on it, but I think there won't be a lot of dead air. I think just pick something that there's lots of them that, there's giants, there's elongated skulls, lost civilizations, Atlantis, extraterrestrials, Vikings in America, whatever.
Kensington Runestone. You want to talk about the Kensington Runestone? Yeah, that's a good one.
And I've been on different shows about those. I've investigated an out of context artifact in the Roanoke specials, and have a lot of insight. And we had well-known archaeologist and skeptic Charles Ewan on, and the first thing he talked about was archaeological context, which I was glad to get in our show. And we had native voices in our Roanoke specials as well, so it wasn't a bunch of white guys. And I feel like that's the kind of stuff I want to hear from my greatest critic, who isn't an asshole, what the problem with my hypothesis is, and then and look at it like that. So I'm down for any whatever.
All right.
Subject.
Let's think like maybe. I mean, obviously January is almost over. We'll do something in February for sure. Like we'll pick a time. Like we've had 0 people watch this live, and that's not a surprise at all. But it'll be posted on my YouTube page. I'll post it around on Facebook. People can comment if they have certain topics that they're interested in. We could do it that way too, like a certain artifact or something. I'm pretty rusty, honestly, on a lot of this stuff because I benched myself for a couple years, as you know. I just kind of took a step back, but it'll come back to me. We obviously, you and I talked a lot about giants when you came to South Carolina, and the student videotaped all that, and like that disappeared into the ether. Like we don't have that, so it'd be good to go on record where you were wrong on all these things and I was correct and I corrected you.
See, if you think this is going to be a parade of me admitting I'm wrong, you're wrong.
I'm gonna get a little counter to put up in the corner. Take a drink.
Yes, exactly.
Every time Jim Vieira is wrong, take a drink.
I'll reach out to like my co-author Hugh Newman. He has a Megalithomania site. Like after we do an official one, I'll reach out to some people I know in the ancient mysteries world, and I'd like to hear people's comments. I mean, the comment section is the lowest level of hell basically on Earth, but I think I try to read the comments and listen and answer people's questions when I can. But I think people who are actually interested in ancient mysteries and just don't want to believe in a kind of an addictive delusion and fantasy will be interested in this kind of dialogue.
Yeah, I would think that somebody watches it. If we do it a few times and nobody watches it, then I guess we've had our run. Unless you just want to have coffee, talk, whatever, keep up. Tell me about your cat, whatever.
Yep.
What else was I going to say? I was going to say, oh yeah, on your comment about the comment section, it's especially bad on YouTube. You don't have like your own YouTube channel or anything, do you?
Ish. Hugh has a lot of my my YouTube videos in his Megalithomania section. So I see it, man. It's just like, I view it as like people just looking for a hit.
Yeah.
There's some people who have good points, but a lot of people are just off the walls, just out there, man.
No, it's terrible. I thought about doing it because I get I did a couple of quick videos on giants and stuff like that, and some of those are obviously they're linked somewhere where I get thousands of views on them, which is not any big shakes for YouTube, but for me, like it's quite a few. But I get angry comments on there
Yeah.
weekly, easy. People just calling me names, like none of it. Like it's so I don't really know what to think. It's like is that the level of audience that I'm reaching? Like all they can do is like they don't even understand what the video is supposed to be saying, and then they just want to like make fun of my teeth or something. Like that's what we're doing here. So
Well,
it's
the dynamic in the ancient mysteries world is like I'm the big hero because I'm battling, the vast conspiracy, and you're part of the establishment, Mr. Deep State or whatever. So you're portrayed in a particular way. See, I'll catch a lot of shit from like skeptics, who go overboard and will like try to take a run at me, and you'll probably catch more heat from the true believers who are interested, but they've been drawn into a conspiracy because conspiracy plays and conspiracy sells and conspiracies highlighted on a lot of ancient mystery shows. So I'm kind of like I'm in your camp with that. There's a lot of bullshit out there, and the dynamic or the this overarching premise that like science is somehow not to be trusted, and academics somehow are dealing a cabal that like interacts, and they have this like similar agenda that conceals evidence, and it's like it's one of those things like we are it's like Plato's Academy. You look at humanity and you're just kind of heartbroken that people aren't more accelerated in their understanding and the way they treat each other, and you can only do your best, and you can only speak on matters that are engaged in objective reality. And it doesn't mean you can't talk about mystical ideas. The point is that you can only control what you can control. It's like freaking AA. And there's some people out there that are just off the wall and appeal to reasonable people. And if you're wrong, self-reflect. Like when I admit I'm wrong, that helps. That gives permission to people, especially guys who are totally like, committed to being right. It's like, oh man, that idiot just admitted he's wrong. Maybe I can look at things differently. But I feel your pain, man. It's like I don't want to drag you back into hell because
it honestly doesn't bother me. Like the reason I would make a video like that, and this was the one I'm talking about in particular. I got to go here in a minute, but it's like the Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins Lovelock Cave. Like she never uses the word giant, says anything about giants. Like there's a couple things that got melded together there to talk about the giants of Lovelock Cave. So I made this little demonstration video for my class because I want to show them kind of like the format I wanted them to make their videos in. So that's all it was. It took me like 20 minutes to make it, whatever.
Yep.
The point of making a video like that is to reach the people who are curious about it or disagree with it or whatever. So the fact that they comment and are very angry at me means at least I'm reaching the people I'm trying to reach. Like it doesn't do any good to just keep saying the same thing, to people who already agree with you. Like that's not interesting.
Yes,
Like
yes.
I've never shied away from having a discussion about almost anything, especially when it comes to do with science. Like where, if we can agree on facts, then we can talk about how those facts are interpreted and all that sort of stuff. So if you don't find a person who has a different interpretation, then what are you even talking about? Like you're all just sitting there smiling at each other, which is no fun. So
I think the missing element out there is somebody who is investigating alternative ideas, somebody who has a scientific academic background, discussing the matters, putting them into context, talking about what scientific standard needs to be met, how science works, and the alternative side, I would say something like where I would like science to take oral traditions more seriously, or and then you have a dialogue so you can see the dynamics, right? That doesn't exist because it's either like you write a paper, it's peer reviewed, academic colleagues look at it, somebody does a crazy video about the flat earth, and everybody, you know what I'm saying? That there's this dichotomy of, or this dynamic where the two matters are not blended and talked about. So nobody has a context. Like it's you just get drawn in, and you're, I don't know, basically you become a victim oftentimes when you're like a fan of ancient mysteries. You become a victim of getting snake oiled and getting dry humped, if you will. It's like Oak Island season 10. And I admire the effort, but that would have been a great like mini series for 4 episodes. But the network is like, no, this is a cash cow. We got to string this thing out. So everybody's like, oh, I love that show, but they never find anything, or it's drawn out so long. And I'm like, yeah, that's the network model. They don't want to kill this off. You know what I mean? They'll never play straight with you. And to understand that, oh, this idiot who's talking, he's actually done shows and he's dealt with these dynamics in the industry. And he's telling me that they don't want to find the truth. They want 10 episodes of Drek, endlessly, so they can, get 2.6 million viewers, So those things aren't talked about, So that's a long-winded way of saying I think this kind of dynamic between us, whether 10 people watch it or more, I don't give a shit, because I think it is the right, insane meeting point to move forward in like we have encouraged science to look at more controversial ideas and more controversial ideas brought under the microscope of science. That's what I believe.
Yeah, well, let's give it a shot. So
Okay.
I'll put a link to the Mystery Hour channel down in the comments. If anybody watches this, I see we've had viewers kind of come and go very little, but if anybody has any comments, if you get to make it to the end of the video, congratulations. If you want to see us discuss a certain topic, stick it down there, and subscribe to the other channel so you'll get notifications when we go live or whatever. And maybe if we know when we're going to do it, if we have that much of a plan, we can talk about it ahead of time, maybe get some people or whatever, and it'll be there for all the world to see forever and ever, because nothing
Amen.
dies on the internet. All right, Jim, I gotta go get kids.
All right, tell your kids Uncle Jim says hi, and tell your wife I said hello, and we'll talk soon, brother.
All right, see you later.
All right, take care, Andy.
Bye-bye.